Let's speak to Silvia Speight now, who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 4 years ago, and her daughter, Tanya Ord. Also joining us is Professor Paul Morgan of the Dementia Research Institute at Cardiff University. Hello to all of you. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Sylvia, 4 years since your diagnosis, what led to it?
What happened here? What led to your diagnosis?
Well, I knew that my memory wasn't as good as it had been, and I weren't coping exactly the same because I was employed as a nurse at the hospital, and I realised that I might make a mistake, so I left, and that's what got me really thinking about having a diagnosis.
And when you get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, Sylvia, what does it mean at the moment in terms of treatment? Was there anything that could be done?
I can't really remember the names of the products that the treatment I were receiving, but my daughter can probably remember.
My mum's on a medication for Alzheimer's that hopefully stops the progression of it, and I believe that it has worked for my mum to a certain extent.
Really?
Mm. And if this new drug could be approved that could slow down the onset of the condition, could treat the causes rather than the symptoms, what would that mean to both of you?
It would mean a lot of independence for my mum and other people who've got Alzheimer's to be able to live an independent life much longer than possibly my mum and other people have, because a big thing with Alzheimer's is that their independence is taken away from them, and that's one of the main problems for the person who's got it, and the issues that they're suffering and how it affects them mentally as well, because they don't want to be dependent on other people.
Yeah, and Sylvia, you do still live in your own home, but as you described, you had to give up your job because of this.
Yes, I did, but I weren't asked to do it by, the authorities. I did it because I just wanted to be sure that I weren't going to do any damage to anybody.
Mm. What's been the hardest thing for you since your diagnosis?
I've had up and down days, not feeling really good. And it has changed my life as far as friendships and things like that, and going out and going on holiday with friends. I think when you've got dementia, people step back because they're more afraid of it than what you are.
Yeah. So
and they avoid.
Which is really sad to hear. And what about your own confidence in your ability to do those things?
I think I'm quite confident. I think, I could go on bragging about myself, but I'll ask
You're very
Tanya
welcome. How about you get your daughter to do the bragging for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, my mum is really confident, and she's quite an upbeat type of person anyway. Yeah. So she doesn't particularly get anxious about the condition. She's a very positive person, and I think that's helped my mum quite a lot. But there has been days when it has upset her because she knows things are changing and things are deteriorating, and she can't quite work things out quite as easily as what she could, and needs prompting. So that has had an effect on her.
Well, your positivity really does shine through, Sylvia. Let me just bring in Professor Paul Morgan here to give us a little bit more about the potential of this new drug. There are very few treatments and no new drugs for almost 2 decades, I believe. How significant a step forward could this be?
Really sorry, I've got a phone call keeps coming through as you were talking then. I only caught part of what you said. Could you repeat the question?
Yes, I was just asking how significant a step forward this new drug could be for the treatment of Alzheimer's.
Well, I think it's unfortunate that I have to say that we don't really know. This has been a very controversial drug. It's been around in development and in trials for a few years now, and its successes have been very limited. As you probably know, the FDA rejected this drug just a few months ago, and then decided to re-review it a few months later, which is today. The results of that re-review will come out. And many of the people who were on the panels looking at the evidence that this drug was worthy of distributing, getting available for the public, were very reluctant to approve it indeed. Because I think, although, as you say, it treats one of the potential causes for Alzheimer's disease, we don't know that it is actually addressing the main cause of the disease, because we don't understand what the main cause of the disease is in Alzheimer's patients, and particularly early on in the disease, when we really need to be treating patients to prevent the decline that is otherwise inevitable in patients with this terrible disease.
Given the numbers of people who are affected...
It's a very small step. I'm sorry.
Yes, sorry, Professor, we've got a slight delay on the line. Given that the sheer numbers of people that are affected by this devastating disease, why is it that we've had no new drugs for the past 2 decades?
Well, I think it's because we don't understand the basic biology of the disease. We have made huge progress over the last 10 years or so, and that's really come out of understanding better what the genetics of the disease are, how our genes predispose us to getting this disease. My own work is on the roles of the inflammatory system, what causes diseases like rheumatoid arthritis have in driving this disease. And I think we're still a little way away from understanding how this disease gets initiated and what actually causes this progressive decline in brain function that we see in these patients. So although this drug, which targets one bit of the disease process called amyloid and seems to be effective at reducing the amount of amyloid in the brain, looks promising and has potentially in some of the studies some effect on the progression of the loss of function, the loss of cognition in patients. It is not, I think, the game changer that has been implied. And of course, it comes at huge cost. So this, if it were approved, would cost about $50,000 per patient per year. And for a disease which is hugely common, like Alzheimer's disease in the Western world, that cost may not be affordable. So again, it may be false promise for some people, because in most countries, even developed countries, that cost is just not something that can be managed by health services.
And if it does get approval in the United States, as you describe, it has been a controversial drug, but if it does get approved by the FDA, what does that mean for here in the UK?
Well, it's a step towards it getting approved elsewhere. So I think the FDA set a precedent. It will then be looked at by the authorities in Europe and in the UK, and those authorities will have to assess the evidence themselves and see if it meets their high standards of evidence that this is actually going to do some good. Because I think to raise false hope is worse than anything. It's a drug which, in a reanalysis of very large trials, showed some effect. It's not a clear-cut result at all. So I think we have to take this with some caution. If it does get approved by the FDA today, then it will go into, I'm sure, a lot more people in the States. And then in a few years' time, we might have much better evidence as to whether it's actually effective or not. But at the moment, I think caution has to be the key word here. This isn't the game changer. This isn't the breakthrough that we really need in this field desperately.
Let me get a final thought then, Silvia, from you and Tanya, listening to what Professor Morgan has said there, that although it's progress, this isn't the game changer that we're looking for.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up a little bit. I'm sorry, we can't hear.
I was just going to get your reflections on what you've heard from Professor Morgan there, Tanya, and you, Silvia, listening to what he said, that we can't give false hope that this isn't a game changer right now.
Right, my opinion is that at the moment, I'm not unduly concerned about it or even trying something else. I feel I'm doing fine. I'm coping well. I obviously have my off days, but everybody does with conditions they have. So it's not a big concern to me. I'm happy as I am.
Yeah, the medication, I totally agree with him that there's got to be caution in place, like with any other trials with drugs. But fingers crossed, let's hope that that it is successful, because it would mean so much to people and families.
Yeah.
It's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you. Thank you very much indeed. Silvia and Tanya, and also to Professor Paul Morgan as well. Thank you.
Thank you.